The Israeli-Palestinian conflict has reignited, causing widespread damage beyond the disputed territories. Calls for a ceasefire and peace have emerged, but despite pleas from major organizations and the UN, China, Russia, Iran, and Saudi Arabia blame the United States as a catalyst for the war, seemingly resistant to calming tensions. These countries, united by oil market interests, aim to compel the U.S. to end the conflict. Ladies and gentlemen, Cultination is back to reveal this video whether the U.S. will prioritize its alliance with Israel over potential economic peril, setting the stage for an unprecedented crisis. Take your seats and we begin now. Do the United States hinder peace? President Joe Biden affirmed his unwavering support for Israel after the October 7th attack, emphasizing the unbreakable ties between the two countries. He assured unequivocal support for Israel's security, promising to do everything necessary to enable Israel to defend itself. His words were not empty rhetoric, as concrete actions were observed in the 4 days following the attack. These actions included 3 phone conversations with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, the deployment of the Gerald Ford aircraft carrier, authorization for reinforcements to the Iron Dome, the arrival of a munitions ship in Israel, and the dispatch of Secretary of State Antony Blinken to Tel Aviv. President Biden also announced his intention to seek congressional approval for a military aid program to Israel. Indeed, some experts compare this alliance to a geopolitical strategy dating back 40 years, where U.S. Secretary of State Alexander Haig described Israel as the largest American aircraft carrier in the region, crucial for U.S. national security. From this perspective, the essentially unconditional U.S. support for Israel in the Middle East is explained. Their various recent media interventions indicate that U.S. officials aim to achieve 4 objectives in the ongoing conflict. They aim to express strong support for Israel, prevent the expansion of fighting beyond the Gaza Strip, release over 200 hostages held by the Palestinian group, and contribute to mitigating the humanitarian crisis. Several observers have noted and expressed concern that an immediate cessation of armed hostilities between Israel and the Palestinian group is not among their objectives. This is largely explained by the fact that the United States shares Israel's goal of destroying the opposing group, considered by Washington as a terrorist organization. According to Sebastian Boussois, a Ph.D. in political science, Arab and geopolitical researcher, and international relations lecturer, the United States has never dared to moderate its ally Israel, especially regarding the issue of the colonization of territories, hindering any progress toward the creation of a viable Palestinian state. Over the decades, Palestinian territory has diminished, while Israel's has continued to expand beyond the borders established by the United Nations, making the emergence of a viable Palestinian state difficult. Israel's non-compliance with numerous UN resolutions, including the colonization of Palestinian territories, highlights the current challenges of multilateralism. The United States, once the undisputed leaders, now see their influence contested, marking a shift in global dynamics. Today, America no longer wins a war and no longer brings about peace. Avoiding escalation in the Middle East, publicly breaking ties with Israel could also harm essential intelligence relationships with the United States, which relies on this connection for several reasons. However, a dilemma seems to be looming for them. If you wonder where the pressure will come from, we're there. It should be understood that Iran, an Islamic theocracy with significant influence in the region and a controversial nuclear program, is a major antagonist of the United States in the region. Importantly, Iran is a historical ally of Hamas, explaining the United States' goal of destroying Hamas. The disappearance of the Palestinian group would weaken Tehran in the region. While public speculation circulated about Iran's role in the October 7th attack, U.S. intelligence services did not find a direct link between Iran and the Palestinian militant group for this purpose. Recently, Iran has strengthened its ties with China and Russia, both major rivals of the United States. These two actors seek to diminish American hegemony, creating alliances significantly destabilizing for the United States. In this case, we're talking about an alliance that, even beyond the ongoing conflict, would force the United States to reconsider several aspects of its policy. Recall that Russia, an enemy of the United States present in Syria, and China, which often blocks Western initiatives at the United Nations Security Council, are part of this alliance. They point out that for several years, the United States has not been winning wars or ensuring peace, as evidenced by their past engagements in Vietnam, Somalia, Iraq, and Afghanistan. Global powers, especially emerging ones like China, Russia, and Brazil, as well as Middle Eastern countries, intend to play a more significant role in managing regional crises in the future. Now, let's move on to the means of applying pressure toward an oil crisis. To better understand what could unfold, let's delve into a brief history lesson. The recent conflicts evoked the oil crisis that occurred 50 years ago, a pivotal moment in commodity supply that shaped the prosperity of Middle Eastern oil monarchies. The origin of this crisis dates back to the Yom Kippur War in 1973, one of the many conflicts between Israel and its Arab neighbors since 1948. The U.S. decision to militarily support Israel led to an oil embargo imposed by oil-exporting Arab countries, led by Saudi Arabia. This measure caused a surge in crude oil prices, shaking global economies. It's safe to say that the events of 1973 shed light on the current situation, suggesting that international sanctions against the United States and Israel could once again involve oil restrictions. With sanctions of this nature, there is a risk that the United States could face an energy crisis with widespread economic repercussions. In October 1973, the Yom Kippur War caught the attention of Henry Kissinger, a newly appointed Jewish-American diplomat who became Secretary of State under Richard Nixon. While his primary mission was to end the U.S. involvement in the Vietnam War, Kissinger also had to manage this new conflict in the Middle East, triggered by an Arab coalition led by Egypt and Syria on the Jewish holy day of Yom Kippur, October 6, 1973. Indeed, it all started with the desire of Egyptian President Mohammed Anwar el-Sadat and Syrian President Hafez al-Assad to reclaim territories occupied by Israel in 1967. Tensions escalated with Moscow's military support to Syria and Egypt, while U.S. President Richard Nixon announced aid to Israel, sparking anger in the Arab world. It's worth noting that this was the height of the Cold War, the pinnacle of the intense U.S.-Soviet rivalry. To respond to the Americans, 11 days later, oil-exporting Arab countries reduced their production and imposed an embargo on the United States and other nations supporting Israel. Saudi Arabia played a central role in this OPEC initiative. As expected, this embargo had enormous and lasting economic and geopolitical consequences, emphasizing that the United States could not take its oil supplies for granted. As Mr. Besma Momani, a Middle East specialist at the University of Waterloo in Canada, pointed out in an interview with BBC Mendo at the time, Arab unity was stronger, and the strategic use of oil gave Arab countries a significant advantage. Today, observers suggest that similar dynamics could reoccur with Iran, Russia, and Saudi Arabia, underscoring the lasting impact of the strategic use of oil in history. Immediate effects of the embargo causing a shock in the United States. The price of a barrel of oil skyrocketed from $2.90 in July to $11.65 in December. In the United States, gas stations faced shortages, leading to endless queues and fuel rationing in several states for several months. In a country where the automobile symbolizes freedom and the American dream, the gasoline shortage was an unprecedented shock, resulting in painful economic consequences. The U.S. GDP dropped by 6% in 1975, and the unemployment rate doubled, reaching 9%. Millions of citizens felt the effects of the recession. According to Bruce Riedel, an analyst and former CIA agent, Saudi Arabia inflicted more economic damage on the United States with the embargo than any other country since the British in 1815. Henry Kissinger made repeated trips to Arab capitals to lift the embargo, ultimately achieved in March 1974 after the end of the Yom Kippur War. Although the U.S. commitment to Israel remained strong, the embargo nevertheless caused profound changes in the global order and people's behavior, influencing the world to this day. Since that crisis, the United States has maintained friendly relations with Saudi Arabia, curbing OPEC's plans to reduce production to prevent an increase in crude oil prices. Well, it seems preferable for the West not to upset OPEC Plus members, notably Saudi Arabia, Russia, and now Iran. In any case, the situation benefits Saudi Arabia and Russia, strengthening their monopoly on the market to create price stability. Their goal is to balance supply and demand, driven by both economic and political motivations. Russia seeks to exploit vulnerabilities in Western countries. Moreover, with increasing tensions in the Middle East, Saudi Arabia and Russia have an interest in promoting peace to avoid an escalation to war, as oil prices and geopolitical tensions go hand in hand. And this is not a correlation in vain. The more uncertainty, the more volatility, and the market becomes uncontrollable. Stability is needed, and that's what the oil producers are seeking. Furthermore, a return to stability in the Middle East is also desired by other non-involved countries because this time, the United States won't be the only ones affected. Europe will be too. As a reminder, all these oil-producing countries are evidently on the side of Palestine. Now you understand why these countries are putting pressure on the Americans, the only ones capable of and obligated to bring peace without further bloodshed. As our video journey comes to a close, if you enjoyed our content and found it insightful, please take a moment to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your feedback is invaluable, and we Cultination are eager to hear your thoughts on the subject. Trust me, the best is yet to come, and I can't wait to continue this adventure with all of you. Stay tuned for more exciting content. Goodbye.